Hi guys, so I went to edit my February wrap-up, which went up a couple days ago if you're interested in checking it out. And when I was editing, I realized that I talked about the Gilded Wolves for a long time. Like, enough time that it could be its own video and its own review, so I decided to do just that. I'm going to take the clips from that video and put it into this one and kind of create a spoiler-free-ish review. I do talk about some of the tropes that are in the book, as well as vaguely reference the ending of the book. If you consider those things spoilers, then consider yourself warned that those things will be discussed in this video. If you are interested in checking out my full spoiler review of the book that is up on Goodreads, I will link it down below. If you're interested in checking it out. If you want to check out my brief thoughts on this book, then check out my wrap-up, which I will link up here, and there'll be timestamps in the description of that video, so you can just skip to this book. So, without further ado, I will cut to the clips and tell you what I thought of The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. I have never liked and disliked a book at the same time so much. It's not so much that it was a middle-of-the-road book for me. There was some things I loved about this book and some things I really disliked about this book, and so it ended up kind of being in the middle, a 3-star for me, so I'm not quite sure how to feel about it. This book takes place in Paris in 1889 on the eve of the Exposition Universelle, or the World's Fair. In this version of our world, there is a magic called forging that works hand in hand with science and industry to create a very fun and vibrant world. We follow a band of misfits led by a wealthy hotelier named Severin as they acquire these forged objects, and by acquire I mean steal. However, when one of the house patriarchs from the Order of Babel tricks them into helping him, they are pushed into unknown territory and end up in this crazy fight for more than just treasure and more than just their lives. First up, I'm going to tell you what I liked about this book, because there was definitely things that I liked about this book. I loved how we started out with a heist. We just went right into it. The plot started right away, the action started right away, and the first 2/3 of this book were a heist novel. I really enjoyed the side characters. They were well developed, and the relationship among them was such a fun one. They had lots of witty banter, and you could tell that a lot of these characters truly cared for one another, and I really appreciated that. This book is also getting a lot of hype for the diversity that it includes, and I will say the author does a great job including lots of different types of diversity. We have racial and ethnic diversities, as well as religious diversities, and even someone who is on the autism spectrum. I was really excited to see the autism representation in this book. However, I can't comment on the authenticity of the representation, as unfortunately I am not someone who interacts with this on a day-to-day basis, but I really appreciated that it was there and that the author included it in the novel. She also included some really incredible themes, and you could definitely see the theme of colonialism permeating the novel. It's just something that she really takes and turns into something that is unique to her world, but also unique to our world. I did really like all the themes that she put into this book. And the last thing I'm going to talk about that I really liked was the writing. I felt like there were parts of this book that were really beautiful prose-wise. There are so many great quotes that I tabbed while reading this, and I really enjoyed some of the lines that she created, and it created really beautiful imagery. However, there were things that I didn't like about this book, and you're gonna find that a lot of the things that I just mentioned that I liked about this book, I also didn't like about this book. Like I said, this book was a strange juxtaposition of liking and disliking things at the same time. The other side of how I really liked how the foraging system worked in with objects and with the clothing and with the items that they used every day. I felt like this magic system wasn't super well developed. There were aspects of it that we didn't touch on at all, and it felt like a hard magic system that really didn't want to explain the rules super well. It left me feeling confused about what could and couldn't be done, and even who had magic, and if people in this world who don't have magic know about magic, or did they think it's a secret because the society that's kind of in charge of the magic portion of people is kind of a secret, but they also work with the government. I'm not sure if regular people know that there's magic in this book or not. I have no idea. Along with the magic side of the world building, I didn't feel like the Parisian atmosphere came through in this book. Yes, they mentioned that they were in Paris, and yes, I did feel like the hotel had some really fun imagery, but I just felt like this book could be taking place anywhere. It didn't feel distinctly Parisian. Going along with the side characters that I loved and did feel like they were well developed, at the same time their voice in their alternating chapters did sound somewhat similar, and at some points I had to go back and look and see whose chapter I was reading because I couldn't quite tell from their voice. At certain parts, she really let the diversity of the characters lead you into knowing who you were listening to. But at other parts, it kind of fell away and kind of fell back into this third person. We're talking about everyone in the room, and I'm not sure whose viewpoint we're seeing this through. Some of the diversity she added to this book wasn't really built on. She kind of mentions it, and then we don't go any deeper into it. However, this is the first book in a trilogy, so it is possible that she's mentioning it now, laying the ground building now, and it's something we will build on in future novels. Going along with the characters in this book, we have our main character, Severin. And I think the author was trying to create this morally gray, kind of moody, a little bit Kaz Brecker-ish character. I just thought he was a douche the whole time. He didn't really have many redeeming qualities for me, and there are points at the end of this book where I was yelling at him because I was so frustrated with him as a character. To go along with him, there is his romance, which I also did not like. It grated on my nerves. I didn't want them to be together. There is a lot of talk about how there's so much tension between these two characters, and it's just great tension. In my opinion, it wasn't great tension. It was frustrating tension. I'm not sure where it's going to go in future books, but if it's more of what it was in this book, I don't know if I'm going to be reading future books. And for as much as I liked some of the prose in this book, I felt like the writing style was really blunt. I felt like we were just kind of being told what was happening, and it felt really on the nose. Additionally, there was puzzles in this book, and I was really excited about them. I wanted to solve these puzzles kind of along with the characters or even before the characters and feel validated that I could figure these puzzles out. So either I'm not that smart, or these puzzles were way too hard and we did not get enough context to figure them out ourselves. There was only one riddle in this whole book that I kind of felt like maybe I worked out a little bit before the characters, but for most of them they required mathematic principles or history knowledge that we weren't given beforehand, and I personally didn't have, and so I couldn't figure them out on my own, and I basically just had to wait for the characters to solve them. That is one thing that I wished would have been maybe a little better done, is the puzzles. The last thing I want to talk about is the ending, and I don't want to say too much about the ending, but the last third of this novel is not a heist novel. It kind of turns into the ending that you could see in any fantasy book, and it wasn't bad in that sense, but when it was built up to be a heist novel, I was looking for some of those key elements that make a heist novel ending, and this book just did not have them. Additionally, I was pretty disappointed by the villain. I feel like we're building up this great villain all throughout the story only to switch who the villain was at the end, and it just didn't quite do it for me. I didn't really understand a lot of their motives. I mean, she made it clear who they were, where they came from, and why they were doing these things, but I felt like we had a good villain. You didn't need to turn around and make a new villain because we had a great villain. I loved parts of it, and I somehow hated those same parts, and I don't know how to feel. I'm just confused. I don't know if I'll be continuing on with this series. This is the first book that's out. There are 2 more books in the trilogy. I'm not sure when they'll be released, but they probably won't be high on my priority of series to get to. I may still read them. We'll see if time gives me some more perspective on this book. I did look on Goodreads. It seems like this book has pretty polarizing reviews, and I can see why. So I kind of fell into both camps. I gave it a 3, but I feel like I tend to lean more towards the it wasn't for me, which is really sad because I was really hoping for a new favorite book this year.